Hi, everybody. Hello.
This is Bruce, and I don't think I need to say anything more.
Good to see you. I'm not going to shake everybody's hand. That would take too long. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, uneasy. I apologize for the frog, but that I have to blame on the weather. How many of you, and again, this is voluntary, how many of you have had good experiences with cops? Good.
What cops?
Okay. How many of you, if you feel comfortable sharing, have had a not so good experience with cops? That's remarkable. Not a single hand went up in the air. I can say I've had a not so good experience with cops. That's what today's all about. Number one, have fun today. There's going to be an opportunity for you to get up, move around, and work from people who work in the theater at Second City in Chicago and learn how to best communicate. Because there's one thing that keeps you safe and hopefully healthy, and that's this thing right here. What is it?
This looks like a head.
It goes inside the head, you're right. It's your brain. It's your brain. And what we find really difficult to do when you're under stress, listen carefully, slow down now, relax, take it easy. And when you're in an unfamiliar situation, if you're in a stressful situation, if you're in a scary situation, your brain speeds up. And it only gives you a couple of options. You can freeze, like some animals with camouflage do. You can run away from danger or scariness, or you can defend yourself and fight. Cops have the same brain as you do. So sometimes in situations that are unfamiliar to them, they get scared. Their breathing speeds up. They have the adrenaline, and they make decisions that can have a good outcome, a safe outcome, or a not so good outcome, a not so safe outcome. So if you're on a train platform going to downtown Chicago, if you're at a bus stop, if you're just walking down the street, if you're in a shop, the opportunity, the situation may be where the cops show up. And what we want you to do, all of us at CIF and elsewhere, is to be safe under those circumstances. So there's some things that you can learn, practice, and do that will involve you with today that you might remember if you get into that kind of a situation. Questions? You're also going to hear from an Evanston cop, from her perspective, and you're also going to hear from a family member talk about her brothers in situations where they had encounters with cops. What I've done for the last 16 years is try and teach cops how to recognize people from all different walks of life. People with disability, people with learning problems, people with autism, people with mental illness, when they get in situations where the police are called. Did you have a question or a comment?
Back then I had autism
Okay. All right. Yes.
How about people who have visual impairment? Have Scott's covered
People with disability, people with hearing disability, people with visual disability, people with intellectual learning and emotional problems. Yes. So we try and teach them. Now, do you guys remember everything that you learned in school? No, we forget a lot of stuff. I've trained over 5,000 police and correction jail people. So I haven't trained everybody. And there's people that I've trained who forget. But there are a few people who remember. I'm not going to talk that long. But if you live in Evanston, if you live near Chicago, if you live in Cook County, one way to identify a police officer on their uniform is by this pin. That shows that they've taken school training education on recognizing people who have special needs, who may be faced with different problems when they encounter them, and to understand. Maybe somebody takes a little bit longer to answer a question. It takes a little bit longer to answer a question if you're under stress. I don't remember. Okay? Remember that police can get scared too, and what you don't want to do is make them more scared and see their breathing goes up. Why? Because they have all of these things that they wear on their belt that they can use when they get scared, have to defend themselves, or have to make sure someone else is safe. Questions? So I'm going to pass a couple of these around. I've got them sealed up. These are for people in Cook County that have been trained. This is for people in Chicago that have been trained. You can always ask, and remember this, we'll practice it. Ask them, I would like you to call for a CIT officer. Now, what the heck is CIT? Not CIF, CIT. Okay? You don't have to remember what it stands for. Crisis. You're in a tough situation. Crisis, intervention, team person. CIT. Okay? Or you can ask to call for a supervisor. What's the safest thing for you to do? You get one side. When you look at it, then pass it around. When you look at it, then pass it around. What do you do with your hands in front of a policeman? Make sure that the policeman can see your hands. You're exactly right. What's the last thing you want to do? Hide your hands. Right. Or in your pockets. Yeah. That makes them, is that me beeping? No. Because I thought I put on silent. Okay. All right. So one thing to do is not to run away. One thing to do is not hide your hands. And another thing to do is to remember to breathe. We actually teach cops to slow down their breathing when they get scared and they get in a crisis situation. You remember to do the same thing. Okay? So I think my time is a little bit up now. We spend a whole week trying to teach people in law enforcement who are authorized to carry all of these tools that can harm other people. Handcuffs, tasers, pepper spray, and firearms. To not resort to that as a first choice, but to talk to people and try to communicate. If you have trouble personally communicating, remember that some police officers also have trouble communicating. And the last thing we can do is misinterpret, misunderstand, and react out of fear and stress. So I want you to remain calm, not run away, not hide your hands, and treat them with respect. Ask for a what kind of officer?
Crisis.
CIT. Got it. Everybody say CIT.
CIT.
Okay. I'm not going to make you do it 3 times because I think you got it. I'd like to introduce a favorite co-presenter and teacher and trainer, Nora Handler, who has a lot of experience and a lot of good stories, and she's going to share some of the stories about her family and their encounters with policemen. Anybody have any last-minute burning questions?
How do you communicate with the police if you're somebody who is nonverbal?
How do you communicate with police if you're somebody who is nonverbal? Anybody want to venture a guess? Go ahead. Sign language. What's another way of communicating?
You can write things down.
You can write
Or
things
use
down.
your iPhone text.
Or, I'm old-fashioned, so what I would do is I'd take out a pencil and pen, but you all, looking around the room, would take this out and text and then show it to them. Great ideas. Great ideas. What if you had a card that identified, I have a hearing problem, I have a visual problem, I have autism. If you are open to self-disclosure and
do you
sharing,
get that card?
that's a great idea.
You just make it.
You know what? You might say, I have autism, officer, and the officer will say, what's that? So don't be surprised that they might not be aware, unfortunately. Oh, great question. Other questions? Other comments? All right, without further ado, I will let...
The officer happy while you take out your card and conceal your hands.
Was that you? Oh, I'm sorry. One disclosure I have is I'm deaf in this ear completely, so I can't tell who's talking. That's my disability, and it's really sometimes a problem.
I think he said, if you're taking out the card, the officer might get nervous that you're taking something out.
So what would be a good suggestion under those circumstances? Officer, I have a card that explains my disability, my concern, my special need in my pocket. I am going to reach for that card, or have them reach for the card and take it out so that you don't make any sudden moves or they think you're going for something that might harm them. Great question. That's what the day's all about. Ask these kind of questions because we can't cover a million circumstances, but we can sure talk about a lot of them, our concerns for you.
Hi. So, hi. I had 3 brothers with autism. I've lost 2 of them, but I'm going to talk about them like they're still here because that's easier for me. One of my brothers actually was a participant at CIF, and I know Sandra back there knew Patrick. Yeah. So my brothers, for many years, lived with our mom. And so they didn't really spend a lot of time in the community until they were older. And so they were pretty at home and they didn't interact a lot with police or be out in the community. And after my mom passed away, they started living in the community. It was something that we all wanted for them. I think you all want to live free in the community, right?
Yes.
There's a favorite thing that a statement called the dignity of risk. and that was that we all want the same dignity to live in the community, but there is some risk to that. And so we had some experiences as my brothers learned to live in the community with interactions with police. Now, fortunately, my brothers were never hurt, but they did have a couple of scary experiences. And as their sister, I had a couple of scary experiences worrying about them. When we just talked about ways to let the officers know that we might have some kind of a disability, one thing that we came up with after a number of years that Patrick lived in Evanston was for Patrick, we got him a bracelet like this, and it had a little metal piece on it that said his name, his disability, his sister's phone number, CIF's phone number. And so if he needed it, he could just point to this. And now Patrick is verbal and he could tell officers, but sometimes in a scary situation, he just couldn't come up with the words, you know. And so we felt that that was even safer than having a card because he didn't have to take it out. So that's a possibility. In fact, I got that through a runners organization. I think it's called Road ID. And so you can go online and find a Road ID thing, and they have all sorts of different kinds of cool bracelets. And you can put the information on there that you want on there. So we talked to Patrick and we're like, what do you want on there? And he was like, I want your number. So that was a really good solution for Patrick. And Patrick used to live in small communities, and there wasn't as much risk there because everybody kind of knew each other. But when he moved to Evanston, it was the biggest urban city that he lived in, and that was when he had lots of interactions with both police and with paramedics. And so some of the things that we did was anytime there was an experience, we all talked about it, and if we needed to change our plans about how do we do it better, we would work on that. And that's the same thing we all do as we grow up, right? I mean, we don't start knowing how to be out in the community, to work with strangers. And so that's one of the ways that Patrick became more and more safe. For us, we called it his safety plan. My brother Michael had autism, but he also had schizoaffective disorder. And does anybody have anything like anxiety or things like that? There you go. And so sometimes when he was having a crisis, he might act a little different. And people might take it the wrong way. Because maybe he didn't like if an officer talked to him, he might not talk back. Or he might say something that at that time didn't make so much sense. So for Michael, it was very important that we met the officers that worked in his community, and that's something you can also do. You can go to the police station and meet the officers. We did that with Patrick here too. We took him to Evanston police. We actually found out who were the trained officers at the time, and he had one of their cards too. So he knew to ask for a CIT officer, and he actually knew the names of, and if you do that, you have to do it more than once because officers come and go. So like the same officers in Evanston that know this kind of training might not be there anymore. So it's good to check every so often. My brother Marty, he had a bad experience, not with an officer, but being a victim. Has anybody been taken advantage of by other people? What happened to Marty was he was taking the train, and he lives in Woodstock, and he was taking the train to come into Chicago. And some guy said to him, "You want to make a lot of money?" And my brother would really like to make a lot of money because he didn't have a lot of money. And so they kind of played a trick on him. And they call it a shell game. And sometimes they put it under bottle caps or things like that. And they let you win the game at first. And then they give you some money. And you're like, oh, this is a pretty easy game. I'm going to make some more money. But then eventually they trick you. And what happened to him was he had his entire month's extra money on him, which wasn't a good idea, right? Don't carry a lot of money. And they got it all. They tricked him into believing you were supposed to pick which one the money was under. And they tricked him, they did it a number of times and they got all of his money for the month. And so that's something to avoid. So when you see people playing little games like that, you do not want to get involved in that game.
So what do you say?
You say, no, thank you. Or you say, I don't have any money. Yes.
And why he got involved? He should not have did that. Why he did
Because he didn't have a class like this. And so he didn't know. He didn't know any better. Nobody had ever done that, and he trusted people. You know, and he had only experienced being with good people. And so, unfortunately, there are some not so good people out there, and they might figure out that, oh, this is somebody I might want to try to take advantage of. So that's something you have to be really careful about. Anybody have any questions about that? No. Has anything happened to you? Anything like that? One thing that would happen a lot to Patrick in Evanston was people would ask him for money. And we had to work with him a little bit on that because he would get mad. And I would say, you don't have to get mad. You don't know what's going on. That person might have a really hard life. That's why they're asking for money. But don't give it to them. And just be nice and say, I can't. I don't have enough money. Has that happened to you? Has anyone asked you for money?
No.
No. It
I
will.
see people outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
There's
people.
homeless people outside trying to get money. Yeah. And trying to get like food and stuff.
Yeah, sure, and that's really sad.
It's really sad.
Yeah. But it's not something that you can fix. You know.
They have to fix it by themselves.
Well, or with help from other people, but not from you. How am I good on time? Okay. So, does anybody have any time when you were bullied? And what happened when you were bullied? Do you want to talk about it? You don't have to.
Sure. One time when I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
a boy, I was at my locker and he was kind of like being inappropriate to me.
And so what did you do?
I didn't really know what to do.
You didn't know what to do?
My advisor saw it.
Oh, that's good. Well, you're going to get to meet Officer Jenkins. And she works in a school, so she can be helpful to you about how do you handle those sorts of situations. You need to know who is the person that you can trust and talk to about things like that, right? Yes.
Sometimes it happens when someone's being bullied with me, when someone try to beat me down. What am I do if someone's bullying me?
That's a great question.
That's where I
If someone try to fight me.
Jalen, if you are in a safe place,
Yeah.
Some of the safe places are at school, or at home, or with your family somewhere.
Yeah.
You can ask an adult for help. What else can you do?
Before he's back, that's where I did.
Say that louder.
Before he's done back, that's where I did.
Jalen?
I might tell a staff.
Tell a staff person, yes. And if you're out in the community, walking with a friend or walking by yourself and you feel unsafe because you're being bullied, what could you do?
Tell
Where?
an adult.
Tell an adult. So you could go into a store, you could go to the police station, you could go to the fire department,
And so they could deal with it.
you could go to the Y, all those places that you know in Evanston, you could
Yeah,
go.
go to the police department and someone might get arrested.
Yep, exactly. Brian,
And you come in on too.
say that again?
Call 911.
You could call 911 if it's an emergency, right?
Yeah.
Just if it's an emergency. Yep. If someone is hurt or there's a fire, you would call 911. Raymond, do you have a question?
Yes.
What's your question?
What did I?
Do you have a question?
Yes.
What can we help you with?
I can help you with my job. To beat me up.
Somebody was trying to beat you up?
Yes, job.
Who did you ask for help?
Helping with laundry job. The laundry job.
The laundry job.
Oh, at your laundry job?
Okay.
So your job coach was with you?
Yes.
Did you ask for help?
Yes.
Good, that's great. There's usually an adult close by who can help you. Okay.
Good afternoon. It's so good to see everybody again, for those who remember me. So I'm going to talk a couple of things about what to expect, right? So what do police officers do when you encounter a police officer on the street, right? Because there's going to be a couple of things that they're going to ask for. And so one of the things police officers always are going to ask for, the first thing they're going to say is, what's your name, right? And so I heard someone say earlier, well, what if I'm nonverbal? So that's a good thing, because if a police officer asks, that was your question? It was a great question. Because, oh, okay.
Like, they're not verbal to the point where they don't communicate with words at all.
At all.
They have to use, in order for them to communicate, they have to, one of them has to use an iPad to communicate, because she does not talk at all.
Okay.
So that's her way to communicate, but I don't see her use it very often.
Okay. All right. So that's a perfect question, though, because if you can't tell the police officer your name, then everybody's got like a phone, or they have an iPad, or they may have an ID, some type of information that's going to be, that you can give to that officer, that's going to have your name, and it needs to have your date of birth, because the police officer is going to want both of those. They're going to want your name and your date of birth. Now, if you see a police officer and they're asking for that, you can't run up really fast and give it to them, because that's going to make them nervous. They're going to jump back, okay? So you got to make sure that you give it to them really slowly, because we don't want to make them uncomfortable. And another thing you really don't want to do, and I think somebody said this earlier, don't run away, because that confuses us as the police. You know, we're easily confused. And so if we see you run, we're going to want to know why you're running away, okay? So don't run away. If it's a situation where, let's say, maybe you got lost, you know, or maybe you're a little bit confused about where you are, it's really, really, really going to help if you have like a name and a phone number for somebody that we can call, right? Because we want to be able to help you in that situation. We want to be able to reach out to someone on your behalf. Another thing that's really, really important, and somebody mentioned it, we got to be able to see your hands. Everybody is not as awesome and as nice as you are. And so sometimes people may try to hit the police. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And so we always like to be able to see your hands. So don't put your hands in your pocket. And I know, like, it's really cold right now, and so you want to keep your hands in your coat. Don't do that if you're talking to the police, because they're always going to keep saying, take your hands out of your pocket. And since that brings up another point, police officers love giving instructions. They love to tell you what to do, right? And nobody wants to be told what to do. But if the police officer stops you and they're giving you instructions, I need you to follow those instructions. It's so important. It's like super, super important. Because police think that if you don't want to follow the instructions, that you want to do something bad to them. So, and we don't want to make them feel that way. Or we don't want to make us feel that way, okay? So we want to make sure that we follow instructions. Another thing that we want to think about too, a lot of people all the time, they're always asking about all this stuff, right? Because police officers have a lot of stuff. There's like this there's this heavy vest. There's this gun. Everybody asks about the gun. There's like all this stuff. But you know what's important? This is very, very important. So you got to listen to me on this one. Very, very important. Everybody listen. Do not touch the police officer. Don't touch the vest. And you really don't just kind of run up and do it. No. We don't want to do that, right? It's okay if you ask. You can ask the police officer, what is that? What's that yellow thing on your hip? You can ask the question, what's all that stuff on your belt? But we don't touch it. Well, there's always one person who knows. It's always okay to ask, but we can't touch anything on the police, like at all, ever, okay? Yeah. Now, if you are someone who has an ID, you have like your driver's license or a photo ID, whatever kind of ID you carry.
I'll get my license tomorrow.
Whatever kind of ID you carry, first of all, make sure you always have it with you, right? Because remember, what was one of the first things I said? Police officers are always going to ask for that. So make sure you have your ID with you if you have an ID. If it is someplace, if you got to go someplace and get it, make sure you let the police officer know that. My ID's in my pocket. I got to get it out of my pocket. My ID's in my shoe. I got to get it out of my shoe. Wherever you keep it, make sure you let the police officer know that that's where it is and that that's what you're going to do. Because if it's, say you got on like cargo pants like this and you've got to get your ID out and all of a sudden you do this, I saw you jump. So see, exactly. So if I scared you, guess what? Police officer's gonna be scared too, right? Because you gotta remember that like, I see some faces that I know, and so I kind of know some people, and so I know that you're good, but like, do you know all the police officers in Evanston? No. And so they don't know you either. And so they're not gonna understand if you make a move like that, right? So they're not gonna understand why you're doing that. So, and I feel bad because those were a lot of instructions, right? That was a lot of stuff to do when you encounter the police. And so you may not remember all of it, but I think that will be something that maybe you can talk about later, or maybe something will they get to practice later? So awesome, you'll get to practice it later. And if something comes up, then you can ask the question about it. How's that sound? Is that cool? Yes, ma'am. Can we do that? So I see lots of hands, and I feel bad if I don't give people an opportunity to ask their questions. Do we have time? Is that okay? Okay. So, yes, ma'am, what's your question?
What happens if you're nonverbal and you can't explain that you're reaching in your pocket for your ID?
So then if I'm nonverbal and if he says to me, I need to see your ID, you know what I'm going to say? If it's in my pocket, I'm going to just look him in the eye and I'm going to point.
Okay.
And I'm going to let him know that that's where it is. It's in my pocket.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And remember, when I go to get my ID, I'm moving slowly. I'm not going to just go there. I'm going to let him know I'm going to look. I'm going to tell him it's right here. And then while I'm looking at him, I'm going to go get my ID out my pocket. I probably got to use the whole hand. But if you can do two fingers is good. Okay. Red jacket? Yes, ma'am.
Why they don't like hands in pockets?
Why? Why no hands in pockets? Because sometimes, like a lot of times guys in particular, they have like the big pants on. Yeah. And so I don't know what's in your pocket. Some people may carry a knife. Some people may have a gun. Some people just will move very quickly towards an officer. So it's really a safety concern for the officer because they don't know what's on your person. And if I can see your hands, I know there's nothing in your hands.
Are they gonna make you take the gloves off if you walk around in gloves?
They probably wouldn't make you take your gloves off. They may touch your gloves to make sure that there's nothing in there. But they may not, particularly like it's really cold and nasty outside. So they're probably not going to make you take your gloves off, but they may want to touch them to make sure that you don't have anything in there.
When you don't have your state ID with you, one time with the Waukegan police, I didn't have my state ID. And I said this straight to the officer's face that it's at home in Evanston. Okay, so what else do you have as a backup with a photo of you, your name? Lively. And they took that. It wasn't the state, but it was still something with a photo of me and my name on it, and they let me slide.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be a state ID, but if it's just something that has your picture and it has your name, they'll use that. They just need to make sure, like if I tell you my name is Lois Jones and you clearly see on here somewhere it says Jenkins, so that means I'm not who I just said I am. And that's what the police are trying to do, is make sure that you are who you say you are, but also that in the event that you need help, they can make sure that they're getting help for the right person.
So I say, when you're, like, reduce fair, lively is the plan B if you all have your state. That's my advice for everyone.
It is, right. You should have a plan B because not everyone has a state ID. But you want to make sure that you have something that you can show so that people will know who you are. So, yes, ma'am.
If you're nonverbal, one easy way maybe to tip them off is to point to your mouth, and they would have a feeling that you couldn't speak.
Exactly.
And that wouldn't be anywhere near your pocket.
That would be an awesome place to start.
You're tongue-tied because you're frightened.
Right. Exactly. And as police officers, we do understand that sometimes, everybody's not comfortable being around the police. We understand that. And so if you are nervous, you want to have some kind of way that you can communicate, because one thing that could happen when you're nervous is you might stop talking. You may just completely freeze. But you've got to have some way to be able to communicate with that officer. And I heard someone, I can't remember, someone said something about bracelets. About having some kind of information. So that could be something where if you're a person who's nonverbal, you could have that on that could be something that could be on the bracelet. That could be something so that, the officers could recognize that it's, I don't know what they call those, a medical alert or something. Yeah. So, right. So that could be something that you could have on that bracelet so that the officer can look at that to identify what the problem is. Yes. What's your question?
This is kind of going to sound funny. Like when a cop car stopped the car and then asked somebody to step out of the car, then they have hands in their pocket. And then when somebody started to act guilty, they would run for the police officer, then they would chase after them.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, because if the police have stopped you, then all of a sudden you take off running. Remember I said that looks kind of suspicious. So the police officer may just run after them. That's a good point. Yes. All right, I'm going to start here and then I'll go here. Yes.
I watched a TV show called Cops.
That's not true, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
not true.
You saw me on there? Did you see me on there? Oh, okay. I was like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Okay. Is it CJ?
Yeah.
CJ, what's your question?
My question is, if there's something going on with my property, if the bad people try to steal part of my house, I can call the police or I can call you.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And that's something, you know what? Thank you for asking that question, CJ, because this is something that I want everybody to understand. If you need the police, call. Don't think, oh, I better not call for this, or this isn't important enough for me to call. No, that's why we're here. If you are in an emergency situation, or if you're in a situation where you don't feel safe or something has gone wrong, don't hesitate to call the police. If we get there and it turns out, and I'll give you a perfect example. We had someone call because they thought somebody was breaking into their neighbor's house, right? Because they had gone through a window. And so that looks like somebody's breaking into a house, right? Yeah. So they call the police and they're like, hey, somebody's breaking into my neighbor's house. So the police, they get there. Well, it was actually the neighbor who had locked their keys in the house.
Oh, wow.
And they were trying to get into their own house. We weren't mad at anybody, right? We go there, we figure it out, we let them know everything's okay, and we leave. So it's okay if you have to call the police. No problem at all. All right, let me get some other people who haven't had a chance to ask questions yet. What's your question?
Do the cops really get hit by cars and blown up?
Not blown up, but yeah, sometimes we have officers. We had an officer here.
But isn't that illegal to hit a police officer with your car?
Well, but you know what? You have to remember that police officers spend a lot of time in their car, and so they're doing a lot of driving around themselves. And so just like people make mistakes.
No, but if they're running, like they're not in their car.
Oh, you mean like they're chasing somebody and somebody?
Chasing somebody and they accidentally try to run across the street and they get hit by a car.
Oh, I almost saw that.
If it's an accident,
It wasn't walk, it was
you
almost a
can't.
bicycle.
Nobody can get in trouble for not doing something on purpose. It's if you do something on purpose.
Wouldn't that be considered on purpose?
No. If that would be the same thing as if, like, you know how sometimes how parents are always telling their kids don't play in the street, right? But then sometimes they play in the street anyway, and so the ball goes out into the street and they run to get the ball, and then a car is coming. And if there's no stop sign there and they don't see them and they get hit, they didn't mean to do it. It wasn't their fault. So you can't really they can't really get in trouble for that. So it's the same thing with the police.
Like an accident.
It's an accident.
Okay. I don't always know the difference between accidents and emergencies.
So an accident means you didn't do it on purpose, right? It means something happened, but you weren't trying for it to happen, right? So an emergency means that, man, this is a big deal. I need for somebody to be here right now. Somebody's like really, really hurt or something really, really bad's happening. So those are going to be your emergencies.
Okay, I've never actually had an emergency, so I don't
Me either. It's okay.
Officer Jenkins, we have time for about 3 more questions.
Okay, 3 more questions. All right, so let me see. I got 3 hands. All right, I'm going to start in the back. Yes, what's your question? I'm sorry?
Okay. If what happens if you're giving instructions to someone and you have to flash, some reason the officer has to flash their bright lights and the person happens to be sensitive to high sensitivity?
So you just got to let them know that. Because particularly if it's like at night, we do it all the time.
Right.
Because we can't see, and a lot of what we're depending on is being able to identify someone. So if it's like late at night and you're walking down the street, and Evanston's kind of dark. So one of the first things we're going to do, we got those little flashlights on the car, and we're going to turn that on, and it is blinding. It is like super bright. It is. It's crazy. So if you have a sensitivity to light, just let the officer know that. Like, I'm sorry, but, I have a sensitivity to light. Can you, shine it someplace else or turn it down or off or whatever they can do, but just and a lot of what you say, it's about how you say it. So if you have a sensitivity to light and an officer comes and he turns on the light, don't say, "Hey, stupid, turn the light off." Don't do that. Don't do that. No, that's not nice. But if you say, "Excuse me, officer, I'm sensitive to light. Can you turn that off?" See, it's a big difference. Big difference, okay? All right. 2 more questions. Yes.
I got a comment. When you said about the door, when you said about they left the keys inside.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
She should kick the door.
That still would look suspicious, though, don't you think? Yeah. They're still calling the police. All right, my last question.
Yes. Finally.
I'm sorry. Did I miss you? I'm sorry.
I raised my hand the whole time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. What if the guy has a knife and you're trying to defend yourself, like they're trying to break in, and you don't have nothing to defend yourself, and it might take a while to get here because it's like snowing outside of today. That might take a while to get to your destination, to your place.
So you're
You have to
saying?
go fast.
Yeah, we do. And we go fast even when it's snowing out. We try. But you're saying if somebody has a knife at you, or if somebody has a knife at me?
A knife at the house. they pick a knife up.
Oh, they pick a knife up at your house.
They're trying to fight somebody that
Oh, they're trying to fight you. So then,
stab you or something bad happens.
right. So, and you know what? If there's something that you can do in that case to defend yourself, you definitely want to do that. But if it's in your house, you can always go in another room, try and close the door, see if there's another way for you to get out so you can get away from the situation.
Get hurt.
Exactly. And we don't want you to get
die,
hurt.
You know what I'm saying?
We don't want you to get hurt.
I just want the policemen to come here. Like,
Right.
I want them to come
You
here.
know what, Grayson, you can always be rest assured that they are getting there as quickly as they can.
I have good questions.
You do. Everybody had great questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Officer Jenkins, to Nora and Bruce for their part of the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.